I'm going to just introduce quickly, Stephanie Lando has been with us for about 17 years, and she has really been the point person for our 9/11 programs, beginning with, in this community, working on outreach to the responders and survivors, and working with not just the organizations, but also the law firms that have been working in this area. So, Steph, I'll turn it over to you.
Since it's a big crowd coming up to the stage, why don't you start doing this while I start reading out the rules of the road. First of all, I'd like to say welcome to Allison, but also congratulations to Nicole and Sally. I am so thrilled that you've decided to come back. So it's a wonderful team. I'm sure all of you have had great experience with them, but from our perspective, this is a dream team to be working with. So this is my the second dream team are all these attorneys, and these are the people that show up.
Stop it.
Are present, have your interests in mind, and are here to answer questions because we are all working together to make this process work better, to represent you better. And I'm going to let Matt McCauley, who is going to moderate some questions and answers, and then I'm imploring you to please not ask personal questions. We're willing to spend some time and answer them when we get the opportunity. But this is sort of a general information and a continuation of how things are going. I'm going to turn over to Matt.
I'm Matt McCauley. The panel that's sitting next to me, the one thing I want to point out to everybody here and everybody that's watching, this is all anybody on this line does. And it's not because anybody here has been ordered to do anything. Everybody here, going to John, to Allison, to Stephanie, to Michael, to Sloane, to Joe, to the folks sitting over here from Barasch, McGarry, to the folks here from my firms, from every place else, to the other members of the Special Master's Office, they're all sitting here. There's not a single person in this room up here that's been ordered to do these jobs. And that's important because I think there's a very personal side to this. I think in a lot of businesses and a lot of organizations and even government organizations, people take the jobs because it's a job. They're qualified for it. They want to do it. It's a cool job. It's pretty cool to work for Mr. Morgenthau, right? These are things that people do in life, but you have years and years of experience that you're about to hear from, not because they've been ordered to do it, but because there's a desire from every single person up here to do it. And there's a desire to help people, whether you were a police officer or a DA or a volunteer or an attorney. It's just a group of people up here that really, you combine this. On September 10th, none of us up here had these jobs or these roles. And yet here on September 11th and then 22 years later, I don't think you're going to hear from anybody else up here that wants to do anything else. And it's not for any other reason other than the fact that the folks here actually really do put their heart and soul into this work. So with that, I think it's important to everybody to sort of just quickly introduce themselves. And if you could give less than a minute, possibly, on what it is that drives you to do this work, it would be great. I'm going to start with Sloane.
Hi, my name is Sloane Oppenheim. I work at the law firm of Kreindler and Kreindler. I've been involved with the VCF for the past about 11 years. I started off as a, basically doing lower level paperwork tasks and have worked my way up to someone who now really is the law firm liaison with the VCF, and I oversee our hearings team. I train new staff. But really what brought me to this is I have more of a social work background, and I really wanted to help people, and I'm from New York. I feel very, proud to be serving this community, and I'm honored to be sitting up here with all these other people who have dedicated the last many years of their lives to this community as well.
If you don't mind, I'm going to continue with ladies first. So you both introduced yourselves, you both absolutely are well known, but just, Allison, just your desire to do this work. And obviously you raised your hand for it, so you wanted to do it.
Yes. I want to do this work because it's, I'm back here. Even though I've never left home. The images in my head about being home and growing up in Manhattan and traveling all around this city have the World Trade Center there in the background that I can see as I look through the city, and it lives in my brain there. I lived in Pennsylvania for 12 years, where I worked and went to school there, and I live 5 minutes from the Pentagon. And helping victims and helping these victims for me is sort of full cycle, and I think it's where I'm supposed to be.
So at the time of 9/11, I was a consultant with a large consulting company, and I had the privilege of working on the first victim compensation fund from the time it opened in 2001 to the time it closed, officially shut down in 2004. And those of us who worked on it felt that it was a way for us to try and do our part to help, right? Terrible, terrible events. It was a way for us to give back in some way, and we felt very personally connected to every claim and every person. And at the end, we said, you know, what an honor as a consultant in government to have been able to work on a program like that, and what a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And so when the VCF reopened in 2011, and I was asked to come back as a consultant, there was never a doubt that I would do it. It is something that our whole team is passionate about, and the ability, again, to serve and to help this community is why we come to work every day. So it continues to be an honor and very much a privilege.
He said under a minute. Michael? He said it under a minute. Matt, first of all, thank you for moderating again. You do a great job. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my own father, who grew up on the mean streets of the Bronx, went to DeWitt Clinton, and instilled upon me the same kind of thing of helping those who can't help themselves. And before 9/11, I represented New York City firefighters injured in the line of duty. Obviously, 9/11 was a devastating day for everybody in New York, but for the New York City firefighters in particular. And I'm sure you've heard that we just lost our 341st New York City firefighter just this week. The time will soon be upon us that we're going to have lost as many. We've lost over 6,000 people, I believe, already from 9/11 illnesses. So because of the work I did before 9/11, it was natural for my firm, Barasch and McGarry, and Lee London and James Steiner are here today from my office with me. You've used the word, and I'm going to use it as well. Both of you did. It is such a privilege to do what we do. I can't imagine just representing individual people in car accidents anymore, although they certainly deserve the justice they deserve. But what we do helping the community and advocating, and Allison, you mentioned this when we met you in May, I believe it was, how we're partners in a way. I mean, we share the same goal, which is to help people get the health care that they deserve, the compensation that they deserve. So I'm looking forward to continuing working with you. I've been working with Stephanie now for 21 years, since you and Ken and Debbie, and we'll do it for another 21 years, okay?
Joe Cavalcante comes with a unique experience from where his position is with the New York State Workers' Compensation Board. And again, he's here because he wants to be here, and this is the work he does. So just want to, you can tell us about yourself and why you're here.
Thank you. My title is Advocate for Injured Workers. I'm at the State Workers' Compensation Board, which is the regulator of the workers' comp system in the state. We don't actually pay the claims, except in two instances. One is when somebody doesn't carry insurance and they should have. We front the money and then we bill the employer. But the other one is the volunteer fund for World Trade Center volunteers. So I'm going to speak more about that in a little bit, but my real civil service title is actually ombudsman. So I am concerned about the health and sanctity of the system. I am concerned that it is functioning properly and well. And then also as part of my role, I do public communication such as this, and I work with all injured workers, but of course, there's the World Trade Center community, and all injured workers are equally important, but there's the World Trade Center community. So I try to help make sure that people get the benefits that they should, and this is the most important work I will ever do in my career. Thank you, Matt.
And John doesn't need any introduction, but all I can say is after sitting through yesterday with Tom Von Essen's speech, you are somehow genetically related because he used the word malfeasance to describe politicians at least 12 times yesterday. You have you have the floor, sir.
I don't know what to say. I'm just here because Mary threatened me. You know, 19 years ago, the guy in the back table over there, Ben Chevette, Ben, stand up. Nothing gets done in the 9/11 community. I don't care how cool you think you are without Ben's fingerprints on it. Ben runs the 9/11 Health Watch, but he's the architect of the Sedroga bill. But Ben created a monster, a super soldier, and we created a recipe that hasn't been beaten yet. We are 19 for 19 in getting legislation passed in D.C., Albany, New Jersey, Michigan, wherever. So I'm here because of Ben. I'm here because of my mother. I don't like people, but I love humanity. And I want to go by the title of Third Deputy Special Master.
Honorary.
No.
There was a time when he would have said honorary special master, so we've kind of moved here a little bit.
You know, we can joke around, but the significance of this, you know, they say a man or a woman dies twice, when their heart stops and when we stop talking about them. So kudos to you, Mary and Frank and Stephanie and everybody. This time of the year, we talk about those we lost, the loved ones that we lost, and those that we continue to lose. So these events should be more often, not just on the anniversary, but why not April 5th or May 6th or August 9th? Michael does his webinars, but there needs to be more events. There needs to be more outreach. We have 85% of 9/11 responders in the community. We have 10% of survivors in the community. That sucks. If you call yourself an advocate, you failed. It's that simple. I failed. I didn't walk the halls of Congress for 19 years to fail. We all collectively need to do a better job. And I'm allowed to say that because I'm the reason. I'm one of the reasons we got these bills passed, and everybody's got a job. The rich got richer. The poor got wealthier. We need to do a better job of outreach. It's that simple. I'm good.
For myself, can't thank John enough for being here because it is something that is a battle with him because it is such a heartfelt passion for him, but at the same time, just knowing him as long as I've known him, to sit up here and have to interject himself in it because it's always about somebody else, so thank you. I'm Matt McCauley. I'm with Turken, Heath, and McCauley. I became an EMT at 18, a paramedic at 19, and a police officer at 20. As my career went on, I went to law school. Had a lot of cases in the Manhattan DA's office as well when it came to drugs and wanted to be an attorney. Great. I go to law school. I graduated from law school, and on September 11th, 2001, I'm sitting in 40 Foley Square when the first plane goes by the window. What happens afterward? I end up back as a responder again. And then over the years, ended up more and more back as a responder again. And here I am. Well, it's almost like Pacino in The Godfather. You get out and they pull you back in. I couldn't do anything else because now I'm back in the world of the people that I worked with my entire life and taking care of civilians and first responders and working closely with all these other people. I'm going to say this because we say it every year, the attorneys that are up here, it's the only field where you're going to find attorneys that actually get along and actually work for the greater good of everybody. It is a unique environment, to say the least.
He curses you out at the office.
I'm sure he does. And if
I know. He calls me.
But we all work for the better of everybody else, and I will say that. So before we get into some specific issues about the VCF, I think it's important for Joe Cavalcante to step up here because it is an under-discussed topic when it comes to workers' compensation. And one of the things that he just brought up was the volunteer workers' compensation aspect of what he does. So Joe, if you could come up and just sort of give everybody an overview, and you're just as important as anybody else, because this is a topic that really is less discussed.
Okay. Thank you.
Sloane is.
Every employee in New York State is covered for workers' compensation of some stripe, and I'll get to more of that in a moment. If you're working and you're getting paid in New York, you're probably covered for workers' comp through something or another. The World Trade Center, though, is an instance wherein volunteers, people who volunteered to come down to the specific area I'm going to discuss, also have a workers' comp benefit available to them. So I'm going to speak for a moment or two because there are the people who were impacted directly by the attacks themselves, and then the responders who came after the buildings collapsed. So first, the benefit of coming to something like this and engaging in something like this is just this morning, it occurred to me that there's something that we've never discussed that we should. The medical examiner of the City of New York has been identifying remains, and they've had some successes recently that we spoke about earlier. Well, those remains are going to be interred somewhere, and it's highly likely that those families never received the funeral benefit. There is a funeral benefit in a workers' comp claim for a fatality. So, to anyone who's listening or watching or who can help spread the word, if this pertains to anyone, they might need a little explanation, they might need a little help, they should just contact my office. Okay, to anyone who this pertains to. We have the remains of someone lost that day, never buried, no funeral benefit ever given. Contact my office. We'll talk you through this. We'll help you move this forward. Now, the responders, everyone who came to help with what's known as the rescue, recovery, and cleanup. Those folks are probably also eligible for a workers' comp benefit, and there's a two-step process. Step number one is you file this form I'm going to explain to you. Step number two is you file a claim, a traditional comp claim, because those responders are eligible for the workers' comp benefit. There's a 2-year window of time typically to file a comp claim, except in the case of World Trade Center, because the law was changed and those folks have the rest of their lives to apply for a claim, to file a claim if they should need it. But step one is you have to file a form. You have to file a special form known as the WTC-12. You can get that on my website, my agency's site, sorry. You can talk to me about it. I'll send you one. I have a pile of them outside. And it's a very simple form. You're just listing where were you, what days, what did you do, what's your name, what's your address, and that's it. The most difficult thing is you have to have it notarized and mail us back the original. However, the deadline is not for another 3 years, because last year we were celebrating how the deadline was extended due to the work of some of the people in this room. Well, it's extended for another 3 years. Now, what did you need to do to file this? Well, you just needed to have worked on rescue, recovery, cleanup from September 11, 2001 to September 12, 2002. So a year and a day. You have to have done it in certified areas, or I should say specified areas. But there are areas everyone's probably familiar with. Canal Street South, Fresh Kills, the barges, the piers, the morgues. I was just speaking to someone earlier today who has never filed one of these because She didn't realize that since she worked in the morgues, she should be filing this form. Because once you file this form, if you get taken ill with something related to your World Trade Center service, you now have that comp benefit available to you. Now, the only specific special thing I want to say is this pertains to volunteers. If you volunteered, if you were not paid to be there and you came down because you're a hero, well, you should file this form. If you were employed, everybody who was employed should be filing, except there are some major categories that are not in my system. Fire Department in New York, the firefighters, they're in a different system. But the EMS, the paramedics, they're in my system. File it. The uniformed police officers of the city of New York, they're not in my system. All the other police, allied professions, file it. Uniform sanitation, not in my system. Anyone else, file it. And then finally, federal employees. Federal employees are in a different system, and that does include the National Guard, which is in a different system. You should do this, please, even if you're not sick. If you're as healthy as the day is long, just file it. Just reserve the right to future benefits if you ever need them. If you don't need them, fine. If you filed this once before and you're not sure, did I really file it? Just file it again. It's okay. Really. It's practically free to us. I think it costs us 20 cents to put your thing on file, and that's a real number. Just file it. File it 10 times. I don't care. It's okay. There is one other thing that I would like to, the insurance. This is not talked about, but just so everyone knows, there are insurance policies in place that are paying for this. You're not costing your friends any money. You're not costing taxpayers any money. As a matter of fact, the federal government bought these two tremendous insurance policies in October of 2001 that are probably going to be paying your benefits. So these policies were purchased 22 years ago next month, and that's what they're there for. The last thing I'd like to mention is just acknowledging that those of us who might have family members who are ill, who do need care, well, I would just like to remind everyone that New York State has this thing called paid family leave. New York State was the fourth state to put it in. I'm pretty sure that New Jersey and Connecticut, or shall we just say surrounding states, they also have paid family leave of some type. However, just want to mention, if you have to take care of someone who's seriously ill and you're employed, you should ask, am I covered by paid family leave? Because if that's the reason and you're covered, yes. So private sector, pretty much everyone is covered by paid family leave. There's minor exceptions, but if you're in New York and if you're working, and you're more than 20 hours a week working, you're probably covered for paid family leave. You should look at your check. You probably have a small deduction on it, $2, $3. So if you need time off to take care of a World Trade Center responder or anyone else who's a family member who's seriously ill, paid family leave will give you 12 weeks at 2/3 of your pay, up to a maximum amount. So I would just like to remind everyone of that. And I wish everyone the best, and I'm here now. I'll be back at the office. If you need help or if you have a question, contact me and I'll help you out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. There's a common theme that we come across in these every single year that we're going to go through as well this year, because it's now relevant to something that's going to happen tomorrow, which has to do with registrations. As you may have heard, we're, knock on wood, going to see the governor of the state of New York sign a notice bill tomorrow, which is going to have certain requirements that puts on companies or former companies to notify employees. Well, that's great, and it gets more people into it. John was talking about only 10% of the folks being registered. The question I'm going to sort of turn to now is, what the reasons people see up here, because everybody up here does outreach. Every single person up here. The VCF does outreach. They're going to do more outreach. Michael's office, my office, Jeannie Kelly sitting in the back. Everybody does outreach that's up here. Joe Cavalcante, Kreindler with Sloane, John, website from the FealGood Foundation. But there's a theme, and if Sloane, if you could tell us, start with, what is the theme that you see for people who feel they shouldn't register for these programs?
Yeah, I think people sometimes feel like they're taking something away from somebody else. Maybe for some reason they don't think they should be entitled. I see this more so I think in survivor populations, isn't this just for the responders? Yeah, I would say that's the number one reason I receive.
Michael?
The number one reason is that if survivors have heard of the programs, they mistakenly think it's only for firefighters and cops. After that, it's the guilt. I don't want to take away from those firefighters and cops. Or I had a family history of breast cancer or prostate cancer, not realizing there's a presumption. So those misconceptions, we have to, as a group here, get the word out. You're not taking away from anyone. And as you said, Allison, in that video, register now, even if you're healthy, because I know you're always saying, Stephanie, the last thing you want are witness affidavits. You want employer records. But so many employers are out of business now. So we're left with having to get those affidavits from witnesses. Get those witness statements now. Protect yourselves, even if you're healthy.
If I could turn to Stephanie and Allison about just the registration and sort of following on Michael's comment. Is there any downside or any reason why somebody shouldn't register or their registration would hurt somebody else?
There's not any downside at all. There's no timing issue that becomes relevant to that just for registering. There are other timing issues that come once you file a claim or get certified by the World Trade Center Health Program. But the simple registration, it has no downside to it at all, except maybe the 5 minutes it takes of your time.
You mentioned something about certification just now. Now, for somebody who's not sick, in NYPD it was called stop the clock, where you would have the sticker on the dashboard that you get to a scene, stop the clock. So when somebody registers currently with the regulations that they are right now, when somebody actually files a registration, does that provide them any protections in the future as far as potential filing deadlines?
Well, right now, the only filing deadline for anybody would be till 2090. If they become ill, get a certified condition, and they had registered and that happens, then they have, make sure I explain this correctly, they have 2 years once that happens from the time that they registered. But if they hadn't been, if you're not sick the whole time your registration is just sitting there waiting, you may never need it at all. That would be the best thing. You never get sick, you never need benefits at all. Funding, I should say.
So I'll build on that to say that in the VCF, there are 2 deadlines that someone needs to focus on. The first is their registration deadline, which is tied to the date that the health program certifies their condition. So you have 2 years from that date to register to preserve your right to file a claim in the future. And for people who have missed that deadline for some reason, it restarts if you then have a new condition certified. The claim filing deadline, should you become sick and file a claim, is the same for everyone, and that is 2090, October 1st of 2090. So when we talk about registering now, even if you're not sick, it takes one less thing off of worries if you should become sick, but you've got to meet that 2-year deadline. It's name, address, social security number, other ID, date of birth, phone number. You can do it over the phone with our helpline. You can do it on our website. But if you answer yes to the question, were you there, go ahead and register and get it out of the way.
John, do you find that more people exclude themselves because of these feelings, either survivor guilt or other things that keep them out of the programs?
Yeah, I've said that a million times, but I think what's important and we're missing, and it goes back to we're failing. People don't care how much you know. They care how much they care how much you care. So when you lawyers, the VCF, the World Trade Center Health Program, workman's comp, Social Security, any government agency. People want to have a conversation. They want to be talked to like an adult. They want to be heard. They don't want to feel like a statistic. Talk to them. It's that simple. When I talk to a responder or a survivor, I talk to them before I hit them with statistics and numbers and facts. We're talking to people who were affected by the worst day in this country's history. We're talking to people who have post-traumatic or COPD or cancer. Many of them don't come forward because they already made a phone call years ago and they had a bad conversation. They'd rather go to a private doctor. We need to rebrand ourselves and learn how to communicate and talk to people, because that will get us in the right direction and get more people into these programs. That's fact. I'll argue that with anybody.
With Joe, Joe brought up organizations that are not involved in the New York State Workers' Compensation Program. So some of those agencies also have their own what are called notices of participation. Of course, like every government document, they have letters and numbers next to them. NYPD has their own. FDNY has their own. NYSERS has their own. They all have their own forms. So if you were a responder, you do not have to be sick. This is one of the things, we do not have till 2090 on these. They do keep getting reauthorized, but notices of participation. It's called a notice of participation no matter what union you were in or whether you were a volunteer or not. Again, different letters and numbers. Those do need to get filed, and they're protective in the future. Could you confirm that in no way, shape, or form, it's kind of rhetorical, that one person's claim affects another person's claim, or that it reduces the value of their claim, or they're taking away from somebody else?
Not in any way whatsoever. There's one of the amazing things that happened by virtue of the permanent authorization in 2019 is we have funds available to us as needed. And it's an extraordinary accomplishment accomplished by a number of people in this room and others, some who are with us and some who sadly are gone. And I don't know of any other program like that. And nobody is taking anything out of anybody else's pocket. And we can't emphasize that more. And I'll add to the list of things. Generally, people just don't even know about this. Yeah. They don't think this exists anymore. They don't think the VCF exists. People I know, highly educated people, people I worked with, they had no idea this still existed. And to John's point, they did think at some point, oh, it was just for, it's just for responders. And Mike's point, oh, it's just responders if they thought of it at all. But they still didn't think it was still around.
We forget, right after 9/11, those first couple weeks, those first couple months, a lot of people moved out of New York.
Yep.
Out of fear. Moved in Arizona, in Utah, in California. We could do all the outreach we want to a blue in the face in New York City. But there's got to be a national push by everybody collectively to reach those.
Yeah.
Because that's not happening.
I'm going to add something to what John said from a personal experience and kind of looking back. I was honored to be with John down in D.C. and run teams with him and Michael down there and other people who were there. And to look back at that, and when you see the pictures, and I'm in the background, John's in the picture, we're all in the pictures, or on TV, if you turn the volume off, what do you see? You see construction worker, firefighter, retired police officer, other people that represent them in all these pictures. And if you're kind of toning it out, if we could go back in time and to understand, and John will tell you, one of the driving points of 2019 was talking about the survivors and how the survivors went back to work and how the survivors were the ones who supported Wall Street and showed the rest of the world that we were never going to cower to terrorism. And yet at the same point, everybody up here is still trying, and the World Trade Center Health Program is still trying to knock on the door of the survivors. Because when you're down there and you're part of these things, you know the arguments, you talk to the people, you're in these meetings, and yet at the same time, could we have done something better? Sure, unfortunately, we have a time machine to go back and change it. But that's what everybody up here is talking about, is getting the notice out to everybody, getting all the information out to there. Because whether you're a survivor or a responder, you should be registered for these programs. Sloane, with respect to the survivors, are they treated any differently by the VCF?
No, not at all.
Can you expand on that a little bit, whether it comes to presence or whether it comes to, are they held to a higher standard, like given something in your experience?
No, in my experience, the survivors and the responders have the same threshold for presence, and they need to get certified just like the responders do.
On the VCF side, not on
Correct.
the World Trade Center Health
Correct.
Program side. So, I mean, World Trade Center Health Program, I know you're here, do a better job.
Matt, could I?
Yes, Joe, sorry, I
Add
jumped right
something?
over you and I forgot about that. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm always interested in the procedures, like those little details, and just want to point out to anyone, you might have information with the VCF. You might have information with your attorney. You might have information at the World Trade Center Health Program. You might have information with me, and you might be able to use the same information all across. You really made me think of this when you're talking about retirement, because people do have disability retirements due to what happened. And I can tell you that there are retirement systems where that piece of paper you file with me, that's like gold in the retirement system. They use that. So if you filed something with me, the WTC-12, for example, and you need it over there, just ask. It's no big deal to print it out and mail it to you. I do it myself.
Tell that to NICES.
If they need it for that, they can certainly have it. I'll certainly give you what's in your file with us.
Michael, how often do you run into people who think that they're registered for one thing, and in fact, they're not?
Right.
They're registered for something else.
So there was this thing called the World Trade Center Registry, which was back in the day all we had to collect information. So many people unfortunately believe that, oh, I'm registered in the health program and the Victim Compensation Fund because of what I did 20 years ago. That's not true. But what I want to add is this. The Victim Compensation Fund, first of all, to quote our friend Jordy, you don't even need an attorney to register. You don't need an attorney to file a claim. Most of my clients, I'm sure most of all of our clients feel like for the 10% that Congress capped our fee at, it's worth not having to deal with all this, but you can do it alone. And also, it's not adversarial. So this is not like going to court where the judge is going to cross-examine you or the other attorney is going to do it. They want to help you. That's their job. And it's not like anything I've ever done in my legal career. So please don't worry about having to fight them. You'll be surprised. And if I can put in a last thing, I'll let you talk about this, something that you and Rupa did, which was create the Expedite program, which gives sick and dying people such comfort. And this isn't done in the real, at 60 Center Street or at any of these courthouses. Would you please talk to them about that?
Certainly, and I appreciate the comments that are made about our team being advocates and non-adversarial, because it's true. Every member of our team is passionate about helping, as I said before, and in particular, our helpline team sees themselves as advocates for our claimants. You can call our helpline, you can set an appointment where you sit in front of your computer and they walk you through field by field. They'll answer every question you have. They'll tell you how to upload documents to your claim. They will walk you through and hold your hand through the entire process. It is a tremendous resource, and we encourage everyone, please call our helpline if you need assistance. On the expedites, our helpline is also involved in that process. So it takes today somewhere around 14 to 16 months from submission to an award. There are some reasons for that, and I think Allison will talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing to help with that. But we recognize not everybody can wait that long. And so several years ago, we put in place what we call our expedited claim process, which is for individuals who are terminally ill or facing significant financial hardship, such as eviction or foreclosure. These individuals are able to call our helpline, request expedited processing. You do need to submit some type of proof along with your claim form, a complete claim form. But expedited claims can move from submission to payment in 4 weeks. Every member of our team we have a team that focuses on the expedites. We have agreements with all of our partners, FDNY, SSA, places where we may need to get information on a claimant's behalf. We have agreements with them, including with NIOSH. If we have a claim that has come in and we need information on the person's certified conditions, we have an expedited process to get that information from NIOSH. So the health program. So all of our partners participate in this all the way through to Treasury, which processes our payments. So we have about 55 to 60 expedite requests a month. We approve somewhere between 55 to 60% of those, and we move those claims. Our goal is always to get the money to the individual or their family as quickly as possible. And the expedited process truly has been a success. We wish that we didn't need it, but we are happy that we're able to do it, and our partners also support it.
And I hope your helpline people get to hear from the families what a difference this is making to people who are dying,
Yes.
and the comfort that it gives them knowing their kids' college education is going to be paid, that they won't lose their home after they pass. I mean, it's an amazing thing.
It is. From somebody who is at funerals, and you have people who truly, at end-of-life planning, they really are happy to see this process work, and they see that their family's going to be taken care of. So that is something that we always do pay a due of respect to the VCF for that, because it is a unique situation. Adding on to that, and I'm going to be very careful I say this, and you could change it a little bit. Am I correct, or many people would think they have to be in the World Trade Center Health Program or be certified for a condition in a terminal situation, or a financial situation, but I just want to talk about terminal for a second. In a terminal situation, if you could just go a little bit farther, because I know there's going to be people out there who either aren't eligible because they, you take the Pentagon for a second. There's certain categories of people who may not be eligible to be in the World Trade Center Health Program because of what they did at the Pentagon. There may be somebody who doesn't quite fit into a certain criteria for the World Trade Center Health Program, but as you said, they were there. So we're going with the are you there, and can you prove it? Do they have to have a certification? If you could explain that process.
Okay, no. The easy answer is no. So we do have an alternative process, and it does get used quite a bit with the expedited claims processing. It's also for anyone who does not meet the eligibility criteria for the health program, such as the Pentagon survivors, somebody who lives overseas and can't be served by the health program, or we also have the unfortunate situation of individuals who passed away from their 9/11 condition before they were able to go have it certified. So we have a process called our private physician process. It's a name that, I don't know, surfaced years ago. It essentially means a physician other than the World Trade Center Health Program. There are forms that get filled out about the person's exposure and their location. It's very similar to the questions one is asked when they go to the health program. They submit those forms with medical records, and then we have a team of nurse attorneys who review them. They've been trained by the health program to be able to understand how to evaluate conditions in the same way the health program does. And then those packages get sent to the health program to verify the person's condition as related to 9/11. So for those individuals who simply can't go to the health program for one of those reasons, they're able to use the private physician process to come into the VCF, have the condition found eligible, and be able to be compensated.
And that is true for somebody who maybe didn't want to be enrolled in the health program for any of the many reasons, but now they come and they're going to enroll in the health program at the same time as file a case with the VCF in a terminal nature. They can still go through the private physician package with you, correct?
If it is for an expedited
Yes.
claim, yes.
This leads us to part of that, showing were you there. Sloane, could you give us sort of an example of some of the hurdles that you deal with when it comes to presence right now with folks?
Sure. I would say two of the biggest issues. One is that employers don't maintain records beyond their retention policy. Some are a little bit more willing to dig deeper and try to help us out, and others will just blankly say, we haven't retained anything and we can't help you. The other issue is that, unfortunately, people have witnesses who have passed away, or witnesses who they're no longer in touch with, and we have to try to locate them. So those are the two, I would say, biggest hurdles. But yeah, the VCF much prefers to have employer verification over witness presence statements, and so that's our go-to. And if the employer hasn't maintained their records, we then have to go on to witness presence statements. But I also wanted to highlight something that Michael said earlier. You were talking about, in the context of registration, the importance of proof of presence, and I just wanted to emphasize this again. Yes, it's absolutely important that people get registered if they were in Lower Manhattan following 9/11 or on 9/11 during the exposure period. But equally as important is that they go ahead and try to obtain proof of presence documentation, because it's hard enough now, 20 some odd years after the events. It's going to be even harder 30, 40, 50 years after. So even if you're not ill, it's really, really important.
The biggest obstacle is time.
Yeah.
We could sugarcoat this. We could say how many reasons why. It's time. It's 22 years. Take 9/11, 2001. If I had to go back 20 years from then, in 1981, as a sophomore in high school, I couldn't tell you my English teacher's name. We're talking about time. We're talking about time where the 9/11 responder community and the survivor community are evolving for the worse. So everything that we say that we've done, we need to start saying what we're going to do to raise time. This is talking about rebranding, reimagining what we can do for a community. A finite number of people that are sick, most of them, some aren't, but they're going to get sick. It's time. So until we all understand that time is against us, is our worst enemy, which is also our greatest and worst resource, that we need to fight time. These programs need to evolve with these communities while we evolve for the worse. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer today.
When you bring up time, John, that, exactly what Sloane was just saying as far as obtaining the victim presence information now. Now, with somebody who's registered for the VCF, not so much filing a claim, but there's also a little bit of a place saver there, right? You can upload documents to that system without filing a claim. So it almost becomes, if you could sort of explain that a little bit, how somebody would do that after registration.
Yeah, so registration, now they have access to be able to the system, and as you said, Matt, they are able to upload documents. So if they're like, this is the moment they found out about it, and they're like, oh, I actually just talked to one of my friends from the Manhattan DA's office, which is in the zone, is like, oh, I have, well, because she's a little, but she has all of her pay stubs from, 20 years ago. She's that person. Very few people have it. She admits it. It's self-admitted. I'm not speaking ill. She has all of those, and the situation would be that would be the time we register, and that would be the time to upload those documents, and then they're preserved in our system. And it's not like, if anything happens again, your house, you move, it floods, it burns, any of those things, it's there and they're preserved.
And don't leave it for your widow or family
Someone else to do.
this.
Exactly.
It's too unfair.
Yeah. I mean, as with most things in those situations, you do want to try and take care of much of that business as you can, and this would be some of that business.
Can I make a suggestion? How about, we know all of the schools that were in the zone. We know all the corporations. The government is going to sign the bill for the participation. We'll have access to all of those names. Why don't we just register them and then send them a happy letter saying, you've been registered? What's so funny about that? Why not just register everybody that we know that was there that's not in the program, send them a letter saying, you've been cordially registered by the United States federal government. Then, we hope you're not sick, but if you do get sick, here is your number. What a concept.
I'm going to take that one and go back to yesterday. And Tom Van Essen would probably say the malfeasant politicians are the ones who are blocking that from happening.
And that's what
we'd
the
have to have their
advocates,
Social Security
and then the
numbers.
advocates come in and take care of those politicians.
Hey, let's just not forget, the New York State Legislature, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, unanimously passed this 9/11 Notice Act. So let's give them a break today. Maybe they will do something like that. It's a great idea.
With presence documentation, if you could. What is the specificity, or what are you looking for in it? Because it's changed over the years, and sometimes as attorneys we get yelled at because they're like, "Why are you asking me for this again?" And it's like, well, they've tweaked the language a little bit. It's still looking for the same thing. It's never changed. They are still looking for the same thing, but sometimes there's some tweaks that the VCS have as far as what they're looking for at specificity. If you could just cover that.
It's an interesting question. I'm trying to think what those tweaks would be. I think, Matt, if you think you know what those tweaks would be, because what I think we would say is that it's been the same. The type of information.
There's no doubt that the person
has to be there during the specified time period, and then be able to describe it sufficiently that it's, that it's sort of self-validating.
I'm going to cover this sufficiently there for a second. So if you have two detectives that were together at Ground Zero, and in 2012, one detective filed this case, and the other one wrote an affidavit, he may have wrote, "I was at Ground Zero with Matt McCauley."
Right.
And in 2023, you're probably going to get what's called a misinformation letter for writing, "I was at Ground Zero with the other person."
Yep.
If you could just explain what you're looking for. And again, the person was still there. We're not changing locations. They were there. It's just what you're looking for.
So that's vague. Obviously, what you've described is vague, and what we need is specificity. And so if you say, and honestly, I understand that 20 years later, I may not even remember the exact street number, but I know I was on this side of the pile. I know that I saw in the distance, I saw this building. It might have been that I had to walk through and get people showed there, I had to show how I got through there. I talked about what the conditions were that were there, what my clothing might have looked like, the people that I saw there, just something that puts you in a particular place. Ground Zero is so vague. I mean, it's so expansive, we wouldn't even really know where to start for that. And to that extent, that's what we're actually looking for. In a perfect world of things, what you'd say is to people, "Oh, tell us the street number, the address, the time," and we know that some of those things are absolutely impossible. But it's those other things that people can recall and sort of use as a guide for us to understand and see if it is, in fact, so that is where they
I
were.
want to be more specific. There's a guy on a boat. Boat's 4 feet from the dock. Guy doesn't get into program. Guy dies. So I'm to believe that the toxin stopped until I'm not getting my feet wet. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with two guys that work for the same company. One guy was on the north side of Canal Street, the other guy was on the south side of Canal Street. One guy gets help, the other guy doesn't. These are discretionary powers that the special master, not you because you knew. But Rupa had that discretionary power, Sheila had that discretionary power, and I've never seen it used. It's called common sense. And again, we could sit up here and tell you we invented peanut butter, but we're failing.
So, John, if I could comment on your comment.
Yes, ma'am.
The special master has the ability to grant what's called extraordinary circumstances. And that power or discretion has been used multiple times over the years. Extraordinary circumstances apply in situations, and I will use the one that John just said, an individual who was captaining one of the boats that never actually docked against the pier in Lower Manhattan. The health program cannot enroll that person because the person does not meet their enrollment criteria for having been on the land touching the pier. That is a place where the special master can grant extraordinary circumstances to find that person's condition eligible and to find that person to have met presence in our zone. That's another example of where the private physician forms would be used to be able to tie the condition. Extraordinary circumstances has been granted in a number of cases. It's cases where it's either condition related. Perhaps it is a cancer that manifested short of the latency period. This is not a given. I'm not meaning to suggest that these are all granted. But there are circumstances, extraordinary circumstances, that have been granted multiple times over the years.
And these are the conversations and these are the issues that are going to bring people into the program because a lot of people call the World Trade Center Help Program, they get denied, and they never get to you because they don't know they can. So these are the conversations that we need, the real talk, not the resumes.
Extraordinary. Yeah.
Sorry, can I, or if you want to say
Absolutely.
something about extraordinary, I was going to say something back on the presence topic.
It is
Please.
involved with that. So
Okay, you want to go first?
You want me to go first? You
Okay, you go first.
So with extraordinary circumstance, because I think this is actually an example of presence documentation, Jackie, Nicole, and the rest of the appeals team would be right in line with this. There's folks out there who were down there that have no proof of presence, but they were there. There's no doubt that they were there. They have the nightmares to prove that they were there forever because they just happened to get off the train, and yet you could actually be in Lower Manhattan and not know anybody that was there, believe it or not. You know, what happens in those situations? And there's that term called the presence appeal, which we hear about. So that's an extraordinary circumstance.
Yeah, but a lot of those people won't even, a law firm, no offense to any law firms here, a lot of the law firms won't even take that case.
Well, it's a good thing you don't need a lawyer to file
Right,
a claim.
right, but a lot of these, and a lot of these people.
Call our
all right,
helpline and they'll walk you through the process.
So, the average age of the 9/11 responder was about 38 years old on 9/11. Now you're looking at 60-year-old people. Take 9/11 out of the equation. Age humbles you. You start to lose a step, you start to lose a couple brain, whatever the case may be. Those people give up. This is the outreach that we need.
Bad lawyers, that's all I can say.
Well,
if you were there, you were there. It's my job to prove you were
Right.
there.
So somebody who might not have a full grasp of the English language, was denied, is going to give up. We need. You need. Do a video. Get Dr. Howard to do videos. Put this out. Go mobile. Go around the country and tell people about these programs and have these real conversations instead of what's available to them. Because what's available to most people that will qualify and get certified is not available to about 10, 20, 30, 40% of people that can't get in.
Can you just take us through what that involves?
Well, I can,
With Matt's question and then the other?
yes, we'll go, Matt, I'm going to go back to this. Let's talk about the appeals, because I think that was that question, which is people go through the process, they put in their application for their claim, and it's lacking on paper on what their proof of presence is. That is not the end of the day. They can put in an appeal, and they can come, and we do this now. One of the things that I did want to say is that we used to do live hearings. Then we were doing hearings that were all online to respond, which we did immediately the day after COVID. Started by phone, and then went to going on video. Internet, now we have just started 2 weeks ago going hybrid. So you can have an appeal and people can come in and they can testify. It's not adversarial. They sit at a table with our attorneys. If they don't have a lawyer, there's no lawyer there. They are perfectly fine. They're told what's going to happen. It's explained to them. And our attorneys speak with them. They ask us some questions, and they try to have a conversation with them so that they can establish if they were there, like Matt said, and then a determination is made on that. If they have some people they can bring with them who also can talk about that, then that's helpful as well. If they have any other piece of evidence that they came upon, those are also things that would be considered. So there's as much as we need, because as someone said to us recently, well, you're giving out money. As much as we need those types of proof, we also have a system that I think is pretty understanding, and I would say in a completely technical term, pretty cushioned in order to help people go through this process.
If I could add on, because I do think it's really important for people to know, if your claim is denied, it's not because we didn't believe or don't believe that you were there. It's that we didn't have the documentation. So the appeals process is really a door opening rather than a door closing, and we encourage you to come in and take advantage of that. If you decide not to, you should know that at any time until October 1st, 2090, when we stop taking claims, you can amend your claim if you have new information. So let's say your claim was denied 5 years ago, and then you run into someone who is either willing to complete a witness present statement on your behalf or says, oh, did you know our employer from that time can now give you this piece of paper? You can amend your claim. We will reopen it, we will review it, we will render a new decision on it, all the way up until 2090. So something very important to keep in mind, we are really looking to help people get to a positive outcome.
I could say that if you are somebody who gets denied, like Stephanie just said, it's not that they don't believe you, and I'm gonna flat out say it. If you're lying and you weren't there, it's not the letter you're gonna get in the mail from the VCF. You're gonna get a knock on the door. So that's coming from me. So not from you, not from the VCF, but I'm just saying, if you weren't there and you're putting a claim in, don't worry about the missing information letter or the denial letter. Before we keep going, because we can keep going with this, as everybody knows in here that's been here before for a very long time. There's 10 minutes left. If there's are there any questions? Because, sir.
There should be one.
You got a good voice.
That's right.
Matt, I know you know who I am, Frank DiPaolo. I want to take it outside the VCF for a second, an issue that you and I have discussed previously. Another travesty of justice with respect to 9/11 victims, responders. So as you know, and I'd ask you to explain, this is my question, if you could explain the details here. Back during the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the then Governor Cuomo signed a bill that granted the ability to apply for a disability pension. And I heard disability pensions mentioned by one of the members of this panel. It granted the ability to get a disability pension for any government employee in the state of New York except for, stand by people, New York City employees. Imagine that. The people that actually responded to 9/11 are not permitted to apply for a disability pension in New York State. Now, my question to you, Matt, is why is that the case? And correct me if I'm wrong.
Good John up here for that one. Before I go there, the one thing I would say is that for an OCME employee, because sometimes there's questions about where they physically were and what they were doing. Not uniform, no. I'm just talking about the people who were at the morgues. That is something sometimes where you see the extraordinary circumstances because they might not fit into a certain category of location. So
I don't want to live that. You know, I have employees who are horribly sick who are not eligible for this.
So I'm going to respond to the question with a question because John and I went to New York State and dealt with the 9/11 sick bill and then proceeded to tell people don't bargain for something in a union. And then what happened, John?
They bargained.
Let me have the mic here.
You know, listen.
I don't think this was a bargain.
Our work was undermined by the former mayor, and they took advantage of union leaders, and they collectively bargained while we were getting legislation passed that they didn't need to bargain.
What you're talking about, you have a New York City DOT employee and a New York State DOT employee.
The
same
state
letters
one
after name.
qualifies.
The state employee is eligible for reclassification and for death benefits automatically under their pensions, but qualification-wise. The New York City employee, it's different because of the way that they looked at things. It's to go into legal terms, it's home rule.
Matt, it's simpler than that because I've got copies of both bills.
Yep.
So the bill comes out, just to put this on the record, the bill comes out in the Senate, and it says New York State and local pension system, the teachers' pension system, and NYSERS. And then I get a copy of the bill that goes to the floor that has NYSERS struck. So what they did is they put a bill on the floor that took NYSERS, that's the pension system that all New York City employees are eligible for, out of the ability to get a pension, a disability pension. And then the governor, then Cuomo, comes out and says, hey, I just gave the ability for anybody who gets horribly sick from 9/11, from responding, from being down at ground zero, the ability to get a disability pension. And he didn't tell you that, oh, by the way, all the New York City employees, my own staff included, are exempt from that. They're not allowed. Why was NYSERS pulled out of the pension bill? You're telling me it was a union bargaining?
It's a different discussion, but I will say that it's important to the VCF because they actually look for pension determinations for disability. So it's incredibly important to this subject. But having been part of that bill, I can tell you flat out, what happened was it's a New York City political issue. New York City has the ability under what's called home rule to pull out of certain things. And they pulled out of it.
New York City pulled out?
That was New York City.
And New York City...
that wasn't the state. It was there. John will tell you, we had the entire state was covered. In both 9/11 sick bill and other areas, the estate was covered. It was pulled out. There's certain things we have no control over. It's there, and
well, then let me ask
a
follow-up question. Do you think that this is a travesty of justice for the New York City employees that spent all this time down at Ground Zero and are not eligible?
You
But
asked
yet,
me?
yeah,
You asked
John,
me?
I'm asking you.
Just go.
That's a hard fuck yes.
Thank you.
Well, let me give you a silver lining to that. We just met, Michael, myself, and other lawyers, and Matt, with NICES a couple months ago. And it was a productive, step in the right direction conversation where if we did present legislation, I don't think NICES would be as difficult as they've been in the past. So let's put it on the table.
There are 2 bills already up running.
Yeah, they're not ours. We don't lose.
Are there any other questions? I just want
Yes.
to
Alice.
Son.
Hi, Bill Gleason. I'm a FDNY EMS retired lieutenant. On a lot of your witness statements, you're using it from people that were down at Ground Zero, mostly rescuers, who majority of them are suffering from PTSD. And their statements, because you're an outsider, they keep things on general terms. They don't go into details, specifically because they don't want to recall exactly what was done down there. But they're also, on some of those claims, they're including photographs. Are you taking that into consideration? Because, very simply, you could describe that we recovered a piece of a human being from such and such location sitting on the sidewalk. Same thing as if you would describe finding a person, meeting a person. But if you were a fellow rescuer, we could go into exact detail how many feet, where something was located, and we could send you basically to the hospital screaming in terror. So what do you do with the photographs that show the presence of a rescuer when you have that type of situation where you have, say, 4 or 5 witness statements from fellow rescuers, but you also have a package that includes photographs? How much weight do you give to the photographs when that type of situation is occurring?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. That is a complicated, and you described it very well, I think, about what it is like for people to describe what it was like and the amount of detail that they can go into. And for some folks, certainly it raises up PTSD and other things. There's not a really totally simple answer to your question. We don't take just pictures. If there are photographs that are something that may be in support of something that has already been spoken about as in a statement or may have been testified to, we do look at those pictures. Should I talk about a recent case? We actually recently had a case that one of our claim reviewers, just amazing thing that happened, where a claimant was having a very hard time for a variety of reasons, and I won't go into the details about it, proving presence. There had been a picture that had been originally submitted, but it didn't really paint the picture. If any of you looked at it, you would have looked at it and said, okay, no, I can't really tell if that's the guy. I can't really tell if that's where he is. And now it's 3 years later, and so that person was denied. 3 years later, that same claim reviewer happened to be looking for other information when they were doing some research about another claim, and they saw a picture, and they looked at it, and they remembered that picture that they had handled in that original claim, and they saw that it was like the other side of the picture. And so when they looked at the picture, and then they could see what the location was, and that was that person, and they could tell by the name on the back of the jacket, and then they sent it to Nicole, then they sent it to me, then we all looked at it together, we granted that claim. Wow. So I don't want to say that, we exclude pictures. I would just say sometimes pictures are, people think, oh, that captures a moment in time, but sometimes it captures a moment in time that's like in a bubble, and it's not enough, and it doesn't prove, people think, oh, it proves I was right, but sometimes it's not really that, and people just think that that's what it is. So we don't include it to say, oh, you have to provide a picture, but if it comes with other evidence, it's not that we won't discount it.
Yeah. And I would say we look at everything in totality. So the picture, as Allison said, can help. may not be sufficient on its own, but combined with the other information, we're looking at everything that is submitted to try and piece together sufficient information to be able to determine that someone is eligible.
So we've reached the end. I'm going to ask you to just close with what it is that can help move these cases along a little bit faster from people. The documentation, I think you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, so some of you may be very familiar with this, some of you may not. What really helps us move a claim along as fast as we can is when we receive a complete claim, which we call a claim that is in good order. And we have taken, since January, there was things that were put out on our website and were posted in our annual report that talked about what steps we were going to take, and in asking the law firms to work with us and to work with their clients to make sure that they were not putting in claims that needed massive amounts of additional information, because it's just a blockade to us getting the work done. Those claims have to get picked up by our claim reviewers. They have to get looked at. Missing information letters have to be sent out. Then it has to come back in again. Then it has to be looked again. And then if it's missing something again. And you can just imagine how much time this takes up. And so what we really want to do is get a claim, have it in hand, and move it forward so that we can get it paid as fast as we can. There are things that are outside of our control that are slower than we would like to be, and we do put some pressure on them to try and make those things come faster to the extent that we can, but we are looking for complete claims so that all the paperwork is there. Because guess what? There is no advantage in submitting an incomplete and insufficient claim. And that's really what it's come down to. And we have been now since January, that's been the case. We have sent report cards to the attorneys, the law firms that have over 500 claims that explain which of their claims are not complete and tells them what's missing from them. And we've posted that information on our website, not naming the law firms, but letting people know what's happened to those claims. In the new system, when my VCF launches before June, you will not even be able to hit the submit button if you don't have the basic information we need to process a claim.
Joe, was there anything that helps you in your process?
Yes. There's something about sitting next to John Feal on a panel that emboldens someone to speak up, and so here I go. This pertains to my work at the agency. It pertains to the World Trade Center. In my estimation, it pertains to life, okay? So this is not directed at anybody. But Jiminy Crickets, there's the legal world and then there's the real world. Anything that we can do that is subject to the legal world to make sure that the human being is really taken care of and considered in the real world, I think is just going to better all of us. And that's all I want to say on that subject.
Please listen to us.
Well, let me just, I'm not against the World Trade Center Health Program at the VCF. I didn't bust my ass for 19 years and 350 plus trips to DC and 2,300 meetings and 200 funerals and 46 fucking surgeries. I'm here as an advocate. I'm not here as a lawyer. I'm not here as somebody who works for any of these programs. I'm here as an advocate. My job is to speak for the people. And if I fail them at that, then I'm really sucking at my job. So don't mistake my advocacy and my passion to give us a better tomorrow, because we're not going to have many more tomorrows. Let's stop talking about what we've done, and let's start talking about what we can do.
One more question from the audience, young lady.
At night, they had a CUNY level attorney, and there are responders that were represented in the CJ review presentation. Responders and or landowners or this classification to the nice system shouldn't even be. If you're landowners, right? Why did CUNY start cranking out FBI agents? And why wasn't the landowners that had land didn't get one of their FBI agents? How come the business agents weren't assigned to us? Really gonna have us sitting there for 15 to 20 years, waiting for your pensions to be processed and stuff like that. Why did they keep us busy? Why was my business agent transferred to the maintenance department? You understand? Responders should not off the bat should be called victims. They should be called their money went to the Heroes Fund, the teachers union went to the Heroes Fund. How can uniformed personnel go into a victims fund?
So I'm going to cover that if you don't mind. So just John and I and Michael have been working on a lot of issues with NICERs separately. The one thing I will say, and if you want to follow this, I'm sorry, is that the VCF doesn't treat a survivor or a responder any differently when it comes to values of cases. You still need proof of presence, and they still look at the same cases. Even if somebody's out there today that passed away in 2008, they'll look at the case, whether it's a survivor or a responder. There are some rumors out there that they treat the uniformed services better. I'll say that from seeing thousands of cases, and Michael can talk about it in Sloane. It's the same treatment. The issues with different unions and different politics, that's out there and it's still going to be there, but that is definitely a different discussion than up here.
The man in back had a question.
I can't see who. Oh, sorry.
Going back, I agree with John Feal 100%, and for the victims compensation fund, it's the same question that I asked on the previous meeting in the other room about the evidence. It's not about the photos. So for example, I'm the last survivor, the last person that came out of the building. I got buried alive. I was pulled from the rubble. The whole thing was filmed. It was all over the news. There's thousands of articles about it. And when I submit that, it's denied. Why is that?
So the one thing that they can't get into is your own case. They can get into the proof because
But,
Mary and Frank will get shut down.
the evidence. We're putting the evidence there.
Can you just, if you wanted to remind everybody
Wait.
how
How long ago was this?
I'm sorry?
How long ago did you file a claim?
Oh, no, I follow in April. It hasn't been denied, I'm saying.
Oh.
Give me an example.
So how do you-
But
I just found the firefighter who pulled him out.
the video
So
and
gave
the
him his
photos as evidence,
But
because they say
we haven't even
So
had those
I
claims.
will say this, and Michael and Sloane will say the same thing, they don't accept them from us either. So videos and photographs are not accepted as first line evidence. We generally bring them up at a latter time, if I'm correct.
I mean,
You can accept,
As I
you
said,
do a better
it's-
job than me at that.
yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
What I said just stands the same. I understand, sir, we can't deal with individual claims. Your claim hasn't even been processed yet. So there's no way for me to answer that. I'll answer it exactly the same way that I did before, which is that it can be additional evidence that goes along with the testamentary evidence that you have that you may fill out. So it's not that we're going to say, no, we don't want all that. And also, we don't need all of that. There may be pieces of it that we need you to pick out, which are the best pieces of evidence that enhance what it is that you have the written testimony about, or that you come and testify at an appeal. That's our process. That's what I can say. After your case is handled, you may have a different perspective.
Yeah, I understand, but if you inform the people working for the victims or working with the victims about it, to give that exact information, it will be different. We're getting something different from the people answering the phone.
I don't think so.
I
It's very
think
hard for me to
when we
answer
get off
that.
the stage, that you guys just go to the side and have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Sloane, Michael, anybody else? Closing?
I just wanted to make sure everybody, if were at the Pentagon, the World Trade Center Health Program is a terrible name. It should have been the 9/11 Health Program. People at the Pentagon are eligible for free health care as well. Responders, yes. Thank you.
Who are only left-handed.
Hi, Matt. My name's Alan Brandy, and I'm a September 11th first responder. I'm a plumber with New York City Transit Authority. I deployed at a 14th and 6th. Several things I'd just like to say here. I thank everybody on the panel here. John Feal has been incredible. This man has moved mountains for many thousands of people. It needs to be said. It needs to be said. Everybody in the political world, they did what they did to help change things that need to be changed. Laws need to be changed as far as when there is another catastrophe. Here is the man that's been setting the footprint for everybody behind everybody. And so every agency that was there, I deployed at a 14th to 6th, New York City Transit Authority, had 2 miles of trucks going in the aftermath. What the gentleman might have been suggesting, there are 2 bills that are up and running right now that are on effect. The first bill is New York State Senate Bill S7075. State Assembly Bill A7389. That is pertaining to the World Trade Center Disability Bill for New York State, for New York City Transit Authority. New York City Transit Authority had 2 miles of trucks going in the aftermath. We were coming in from all tunnels, up above, below, all over the place, north end, south end, all over the place. We were coming in from all over, underneath. New York City Transit Authority had the bumper train. Just recently, we got into the museum. Just recently, after 22 years. 22 and change years. I am only standing up right now to say thank you to everybody in the United States, because this has to be said now. We were like a band of men and women in the battlefield. My father served in the United States Navy, submarines, USS Bakuna 319. That museum, that submarine is down as a museum down in Philadelphia. This man was in the Army, and countless of heroes. So when this happens again, these people are making sure it don't happen again to every responder. Because every responder has a whole host of things. They gotta go home. They gotta pay the bills. And don't stop. And so that's why I'm coming forward today to just suggest, if you ask me as one of the people in here, how can we change things? Ask a first responder. Have them come up here and have the panel go down there and say, you know what? The police department, the fire department, every agency that was there. I gave a countless list just recently to actually the museum chief curator, Jan, and so forth and so forth. Every agency, and the way I personally feel about it is what happened was when those buildings were hit, the United States of America was at war. And America sent the best in there to locate survivors that were killed on this soil. So men like John Feal could actually be a massive giant for other people behind him. And so some people don't have the courage because they're tripping over their medical, they're tripping over to make the mortgage payments, they're tripping to feed the family. You know what? This is a group that is so magnificent, moving mountains. And that's what needs to be said.
Right.
And John's been doing it for years, as well as everybody.
There's no doubt about that, and I'm going to, without publicly sharing this, because John's not going to, I was the one on the other side of the phone when that change happened, and it wasn't a good phone call with John.
I
So,
just want to say I thank everybody from the bottom of my heart, because the people that we can never really, we try to help are the people that lost loved ones. So I've learned in grieving in my own way to help that person have a better life.
nobody up here is ever going to give up, that's for sure. Nobody up here is ever giving up, that's for sure. Right,
That's
John?
what we're trying to do.
All first responders were breathing the same air as every other first responder that went down there. Remember that. That they all
I'm
were
one of them.
breathing the same air when they responded. That's the whole picture right there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.